Hi guys, welcome to the next video. So this is an extension from the last video, which was on forward pelvic carriage. And just to recap, forward pelvic carriage is when the brain tells these muscles at the lower back to tighten. The lower back muscles tighten and they pull the pelvis out of position, and you end up with forward pelvic carriage, which then puts a lot of strain on the joints in the lower back and causes back pain. As discussed in the previous video, forward pelvic carriage, or in this context, tight back muscles, will be brought on if the lower back muscles are having to compensate for weakness in the glutes, weakness in the abs. The lower back muscles will also tighten around a very stiff lower back, because essentially the stiff lower back isn't a very efficient weight bearer. You've got gravitational load going through the spine at all times, and if the lower back is fundamentally stiff and jammed up, then those back muscles have to try and provide a supportive role. So, as previously discussed, the lower back muscles will tighten if they are giving a supportive role to a stiff spine, or if they're compensating for weak glutes and weak lower abdominals. The other reason why the lower back muscles will tighten, and this is what this video is all about, is core weakness, otherwise known as core instability. So, I asked all my patients this week in preparation for this video, just to kind of do a little bit of a survey. I asked everyone who was in the clinic, what are core muscles? And rather disappointingly, given that they're patients of mine, basically everyone said core muscles are just stomach muscles. So in this video, I also want to explain that that is not the case, and I want to explain what the core muscles actually are. So what you'll see now is a picture demonstrating the multifidi, plural, or multifidus, singular muscles. And these little muscles actually have a role in stabilizing the spine. So think of the spine as 24 vertebrae stacked on top of one another. If the interspinal muscles, aka the multifidi, aren't firing properly, then in essence, those vertebrae are going to be unstable. And what stops you effectively walking around unstable are all the surrounding muscles compensating to pick up the slack for the weak stabilizers. So in that instance, obviously the main muscles that will pick up the slack are the lower back muscles, and we don't want that because it's going to cause back pain. So how do we recognize whether we have core instability or not? What we need for this test is a tennis ball, and you can just do this movement on the floor, but I'll do it on the bench. So you would start off with the arms, well, with the upper and lower limbs perpendicular to the ground. You would arch your lower back, you would put the tennis ball into the lower back. And then the idea is that you would be able to lift your arm and alternate leg without that tennis ball rolling off. And what that shows or demonstrates is that the stabilizers between the spine and pelvis are working really well. And then obviously you could do that on the other side if you wanted. So, once you've done that test on both sides, if the tennis ball doesn't roll off, it means you have good core stability. If the tennis ball does roll off, it's because the pelvis has tilted, because the stabilizers between the spine and pelvis basically aren't working, or they're not firing. So, as long as that's the case, these lower back muscles are going to remain tight, and again, we don't want that, we're going to get back pain. So, what you could do at home if you have failed that test is simply just use the tennis ball, because it gives you good biofeedback as to whether the pelvis is straight or not, or stable or not, and you can just essentially practice that movement until you get it right. Other movements that exercise the core are any movement that brings stability into question. So if I was to stand on one leg, that's working my stabilizers, because as I said, the function of the multifidi muscles are to stabilize the spine. So anything that brings balance into question is going to stimulate those core muscles. So you could practice that. You could even close your eyes, take away all visual cues, and see how well you get on. You could also do things like bridges. So there's the bridge maneuver, which is probably a level 1 movement, really. If you find this too easy, then as described in the other video, in the last video, you can do it one-legged. And again, that calls in core stability, because to perform this movement correctly, you're having to keep the pelvis level. You can also do planks. Obviously it's easier on the floor because my toes would be touching the floor, but imagine my toes are touching the floor. I'm essentially holding my body in a straight line, and again, that requires a degree of stability between the spine and pelvis. So, in essence, that's it for core instability. I don't think there's anything I can add. I've shown you the effects of an unstable core in the lower back muscles. I've defined what core muscles are. I've shown you how to test at home to see if you've got poor core stability or not, and then obviously we've gone through a few suggestions. So if I have missed anything, just leave a video in the comments. Otherwise, yeah, get cracking. All right, cheers guys.